Two laws, nearly a century apart, changed the fabric of America. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, passed just after the Civil War, promised citizenship and equal rights to formerly enslaved people. Almost 100 years later, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 dismantled legal segregation and racial discrimination. Together, these landmark laws represent the ongoing struggle for equality and justice in America. Today, we'll explore the history, impact, and legacy of these two acts that defined a nation. The Civil War ended in 1865, but freedom for formerly enslaved people was far from secure. Southern states introduced black codes, laws designed to limit the rights of newly freed African Americans. To counter this, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the first federal law to define U.S. citizenship. The law declared that all people born in the United States, regardless of race or previous condition of slavery, were citizens with equal rights to make contracts, own property, and access the courts. President Andrew Johnson vetoed the bill, but Congress overrode his veto, a historic move that signaled a shift in power. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 laid the foundation for the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed equal protection under the law. However, the promise of equality was undermined by decades of racial violence, Jim Crow laws, and systemic discrimination. The act was groundbreaking, but its enforcement was weak, and the fight for true civil rights continued into the 20th century. By the 1950s and 60s, segregation and discrimination were deeply entrenched. African Americans were denied equal education, housing, jobs, and voting rights, particularly in the South. The civil rights movement emerged as a powerful force demanding change. Led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and countless activists, protests, sit-ins, and marches captured the nation's attention. The turning point came with events like the Montgomery bus boycott, the Freedom Rides, and the March on Washington in 1963, where King delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. On July 2, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. This landmark legislation outlawed segregation in public places, banned employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, and enforced the desegregation of schools. Johnson, building on President John F. Kennedy's earlier proposals, framed the act as a moral necessity. The law was a direct result of years of activism, including the violent resistance to civil rights in places like Birmingham and Selma. Title VII of the act also created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to fight workplace discrimination. It was one of the most significant legal victories for civil rights since Reconstruction. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 didn't end racism, but it changed the legal and political landscape. It opened doors for African Americans, women, and other marginalized groups, shaping future legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. The act also inspired global movements for human rights and equality. Its passage showed that grassroots activism could lead to sweeping national change. While the 1866 Act laid the foundation for equal rights, the 1964 Act gave those rights teeth. Together, they reflect the long arc of American history, a nation striving to fulfill its own promise of liberty and justice for all. The Civil Rights Acts of 1866 and 1964 are reminders that progress is never instant. It's built through struggle, persistence, and courage. Which of these laws do you think had the bigger impact on modern America? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more history deep dives.